If you'd just like to give us just a quick intro as to who you are and what you do, where you're based, that would be great.
Okay, I'm Laura. I'm the owner of Xyris Botanicals, which is a floral design studio and cutting garden in Birchington, Kent. And I grow cut flowers to supply my own weddings and events floristry work. And I also teach floristry workshops in my studio.
Super, thank you. I didn't realise the teaching element. That's really cool. Obviously, sustainability is a big part of what you do as your business. Why did you decide to get into that? Sort of where did the motivation come from? What was the sort of the driving force behind you going down that road and building sustainability in as a focus?
It was really more to do with my shock of realizing how sustainable the floristry industry is. When I started out, I wasn't growing my own flowers. I had a wholesale account. I mean, the cut flower market is worth over 2 billion in the UK. 90% of the flowers are imported. And I just got to a point where I was working with these flowers and they're so uniform. They're all so perfect. All of the stems are super straight. They're all dunked in chemicals and pesticides to make sure that they retain that level of perfection. And I'm working with these and I was just thinking, it's just there's no romance, there's no whimsy, and I just sort of was falling out of love, I should say, with the design itself. So it was actually the aesthetic that led me down the sustainability path, as it were. And I realized I don't really want to be part of this industry because there's no love. I mean,
yep.
The sheer amount of plastic wrapping that would come in off all of these flowers, you can imagine the amount I was ordering for wedding work, and it just made me think that there's got to be another way. And I went on a course up in Shropshire, and I met a floral designer called Bridget Gerling. She's of Moss and Stone Floral Design, and we were talking about flowers from the farm, which is a cut flowers growing network in the UK, and I'd heard of it before, but I just kind of thought I'm not really growing enough, because I live on a farm, so I've always grown a little bit, and I have had 4 raised beds at the time, and I just thought I'm not growing enough to warrant becoming a member. And the lady hosting the event, it was a lady called Sophie, who's also a member of Flowers from the Farm. She was like, no, you should definitely go for it. You can join. There's no minimum. And it was these 2 ladies basically that sort of steered me down that path. And I signed up and just never looked back. And actually, using my own cut flowers has changed my style of floristry, definitely for the better. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a USP per se, because there's lots of florists doing the same kind of thing that I am, but it's really that sort of drove the business forwards.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I know, what is the stuff that you put flowers in sometimes for displays, that foamy stuff that's like the worst thing for the environment that there is?
I don't use any of that, just because it's not biodegradable. It leaches microplastics out into the ocean. It's just hideous. But the thing is, we as florists, we didn't realise that. It's only recently, it's quite new within the last couple of years that florists have been turning around thinking, oh my goodness, what are we doing? Why on earth have we ever been using this stuff? All going back to the old methods of using moss in chicken wire. And things like little vials that we can fill with water and then reuse. I mean, there's loads and loads of different mechanics. You have to be just quite savvy. I mean, I use a lot of old jam jars that I glue onto trays, then I wrap chicken wire around, and I reuse all of these mechanics. It's just, basically I'll do anything to avoid using foam, but it can be done.
Absolutely. And it just looks so stunning. Like you said, I think the romance element to it is that exactly summarizes all of it, in the fact that everything is unique that you do, and nothing's too uniform, because like you say, it all just becomes a bit vanilla then, and then everything just looks the same, and you miss out on a lot. That's really interesting. And how, just a complete aside, you said that you trained as a solicitor, did you say earlier? How did you step into the floristry in the first place? I'm really curious about that.
Oh, well, I've always been really creative. I was making Christmas wreaths. I'd made Christmas wreaths for years. And just one December, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, our agronomist was having a meeting with Archie, my husband, on our kitchen table. And he saw me making these wreaths. And he just said, well, after Christmas, why don't you grow some cut flowers? You could sell bouquets. And I just thought, well, I wouldn't have a clue about how to go about doing that. Cut flowers. I mean, I haven't really ever thought about that, but I just sort of mulled it over, and I really, really enjoyed making the wreaths. And I just logged onto my personal Instagram account and I started looking at flowers and floristry accounts. And I was just blown away by the different sorts of styles that could be achieved, and the fact that, I mean, my wreaths were really rustic. They were really, they were literally just made from bits that I could find foraged all over the farm. I didn't buy anything in. And yeah, it was just really from him putting that sort of seed in my mind about growing cut flowers that it just sort of took off from there. But as I say, this was after Christmas, so in January there were very, very few flowers on our farm. So I decided to set up a wholesale account because I wanted flowers now. I wanted to get going, and I didn't really think about the impacts of what I was doing at the time. So it was only until, as I say, I went on, I met Bridget Girling and Sophie, she's called Sophie Patton Smith, from Soil and Fleurs, that I, really thought about, actually, why on earth have I gone down that track? I was already on the sustainable track of just using what I had on my farm. So I kind of went a bit wayward, then came back, and but it was obviously a change for the better.
Yeah, but that's all part of it, right? I mean, in terms of that learning, and you have to sort of go through that to sort of understand it. No, that's super, brilliant. This is a really tough one, but if you were to define sustainability in one word, if that's possible, what word would you use to define sustainability?
Future. Basically everything I'm doing now is for the next generation, and since becoming a mum 19 months ago, this just feels so important to me now. I look at my little boy and I just think, what I'm doing now is going to impact him and his future and future generations. So I just want him to be in a world that's, that they will love as much as I do now. So it's really that's pushed me to make my business practices as sustainable as possible.
Yeah, that's excellent. Good answer. Cool. So besides, what we're going through at the moment, the whole COVID-19 pandemic, before all this happened, did you have any sort of challenges that you came across in terms of working sustainably, either with customers or something that you struggled with that sort of prevented you from sort of working in a certain way? Is there anything that sustainability has prevented you doing? Has there been any challenges?
I think the initial challenges were figuring out the mechanics for various floral arrangements. There weren't any books out there at the time. I mean, there is a florist now called Sarah Diligent who had a Kickstarter project. I don't use any floral foam. So yeah, the challenges for me were really looking at the sort of arrangements and installations that I wanted to make and had done previously with foam, and thought, okay, how do I do that but without floral foam? And it was really just about working out how I could go about building these things, and a lot of it was there was a lot of experimentation. I built a lot of structures on my farm and just tested them out, and then started using them in weddings. And so it was a challenge, but I think I've overcome it largely now. I feel quite confident about working without any foam, and actually, if anything, stopping using the foam has made my work even better, because the way if you stuff a stem essentially into some floral foam, it just stays there. If you're actually arranging in water, the flowers are a lot looser. You could allow basically the stem to move where it wants to go, and it just creates a much more relaxed and wild looking arrangement.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Super, thank you. Recommending another sustainable business or a partner or a contact, so someone you've either worked with or you've been impressed by or inspired by, who would that be for you?
Oh, right. Okay. So there's a couture designer of wedding dresses in Ramsgate called Poppy Perspective, and her
Really?
work just blows me away. I mean, she's on my doorstep, and I saw her on Instagram, and I was like, I want to work with you. I want to collaborate with you. I love everything you're doing. Her ethos really resonates with me. We were actually going to do a styled shoot together, but then lockdown happened, so we're rearranging that. But yeah, she uses organic silks and reclaimed vintage lace in her designs. She makes everything herself in her studio, and then she uses all the scraps to cover buttons, and then she offers alterations after the wedding's over, so you can make the dresses more wearable and usable. And
Wow.
I don't know, I just think that's amazing. I
Yeah.
wish, I obviously didn't know about her when I got married, but I just love that. I that, to me, that really appeals.
Cool. If you could give somebody a piece of advice, as someone that wanted to make their event more sustainable, or they were just getting into the industry, what would you advise them to start with? I mean, I think a lot of this can feel overwhelming, and there's a lot that needs to change in the industry. But it's all about sort of, I think, educating people on baby steps. What would be your one piece of advice you'd give?
From a floristry perspective, that would be to use locally sourced seasonal flowers. If you go on to, I would say to any bride, go on to the Flowers from the Farm website, put your postcode into the search bar, and you will see where all of your local growers are, and contact them directly. Because I think part of the problem is Pinterest. I mean, Pinterest is just full of these huge installations stuffed with Colombian garden roses, but there's just, there's a huge environmental cost to having all of those flowers there just for one day. And I think if brides can feel empowered to find or to know where to find local British flowers, I think, I think that would help. Because I remember when I was getting married, the first thing I was doing when I was looking for inspiration, I'd just go on Pinterest and I'd be like, oh wow, I'd be blown away by all these beautiful floral arrangements. But I'd never heard of Flowers from the Farm. I didn't know where all these roses came from. I just saw these pictures and thought, oh yeah, I definitely want that. But Flowers from the Farm, that website, that's my advice.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, it's the education really, and just knowing that there's other options out there, and you can still get that amazing look and feel, just it's locally sourced as opposed to sort of shipping them in. I'm actually doing an event on Friday around the sort of the dark side of weddings, and I've not I'm not married. I've never planned a wedding. I've sort of been in corporate events, so it's been really interesting to see this side of it. To sort of see, what the sort of the worst offenders are, and sort of exotic flowers and shipping flowers in from far-flung places is one of the big offenders. So that's really interesting.
Oh, do you know what? I went to the Flowers from the Farm annual conference a couple of months ago, and there's a sustainable cut flower project. It's being run at the Research Centre for Business and Society at Coventry University. And it's so good. It definitely highlights the dark side of the global cut flower industry anyway.
Yeah, totally. Super. Thank you very much. At the moment, are you still working on live events? This was a question, have you sort of switched to virtual events, which I'm guessing not so much, but or are things on pause? Like, what's your sort of status at the moment in terms of planning and what's next for you?
Well, I'm certainly not doing any live events, but I recorded some free floristry tutorials on my IGTV channel. But yeah, no live events at the moment. I mean, the IGTV tutorials were called a hashtag bouquet along, and it was literally me trying to give some advice and inspiration to people out there who were basically like me, bored at home and wanted to learn a new skill, like how to make a bouquet and sort of things you need to think about. And I offered 3 different methods, and I recorded 3 videos and then an additional 4th one, because one of the bouquets you had to have a little chicken wire armature to do it with. So yeah, that was really my I don't really know if you can call it event, but yeah, that was just something I've done.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's, I think a lot of people are pivoting to doing something, whatever industry that they're in, wanting to, I think, connect with an audience, wanting to sort of share what their skill and their expertise is in. Definitely, I think that's really important to do. Excellent. So following, once we come out of this eventually, I think sustainability has been a struggle to get it sort of on the agenda, I think, certainly in the corporate space that I'm familiar with. And, it's definitely within weddings, eco wedding is definitely, the sort of top trend at the moment. But in terms of when we come out of this, do you think the focus for sustainability, so in terms of attention that it's given, the budget that people give it, do you think that will be increased? Do you think it will stay the same, or do you think it's going to be sort of sidelined as people are sort of focusing on building up the economy again? How do you think people will think about sustainability once we get back to normal?
I actually think that at the moment people are finding new ways to go without their luxuries. I mean, look at the boom in gardening. I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted to source a couple of extra dahlias and the tubers, sorry, and there's sites saying that there are no more orders being taken because everyone's just gone mad for being in the garden. So
Wow.
I actually think, I mean, it's probably really optimistic, but from a sort of floristry side of things, that the sustainability thing will carry on being popular, and I don't think people are going to lose interest in that, especially if you've got people thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to have a go at sowing some seeds and see where it goes.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just think with a greater increase in the interest in gardening, I'm hoping that people are going to think that perhaps organic and homegrown flowers are the way to go for their weddings as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I really hope so. I mean, I think obviously there's been a hell of a lot of awful things that have happened in terms of loss of life and people's businesses, and not being able to sort of see and speak to loved ones and stuff. But I think there's so many positives that have come out of it, just in terms of people's approach to things. I mean, I was my boyfriend and I were talking, sort of look at what's in the fridge and you think, oh, that's on the turn, or I'll chuck that, and you think, well, actually no, we better eat that because we never know when we're going to be able to go to the supermarket again. So
Yeah.
and how many of these local businesses, like farms, that have been doing the sort of the fruit and veg boxes and things that I just hope that people stick to using those suppliers rather than sort of just relying always on the supermarkets. So
I
there's
think they
been
will.
a lot of positives that come of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really think that there's a much greater demand now for local and sustainably produced goods, and I really think that post COVID-19 that's just going to continue because it's almost become the norm, I think.
Absolutely, and it's a total just change of mindset, isn't it? And it's just really
Yeah.
interesting in terms of being able to make the difference between what is it that we actually need to survive versus what we've come expected, and what those expectations are. Yeah, definitely. How optimistic are you about sort of live events and things sort of going back to a sense of normal? I think there's definitely, I mean, I think that they said something about 7%, only 7% of people, when they did a poll, want to go back to normal. So hopefully, the majority of people are going to take the changes and sort of see the positive difference that it makes. But how optimistic are you about sort of events post COVID-19, and how do you think the future industry might, or rather should, change? Obviously taking the positive elements that we've learned being in lockdown, how do you think that will impact on your industry?
Well, I would like to see more intimate ceremonies. I mean, I don't agree that more is more. I mean, again, I'm speaking from a floristry perspective. I think they absolutely transform events, but you don't need so many to make an impact. I think these smaller arrangements are beautiful, and I think, I spoke to a few of my friends who are also in floral design, and the idea of just using, instead of having these huge centerpieces, but instead having just little bottles dotted along the table with single stems in them, just look equally as eye-catching and beautiful, and I think you appreciate those flowers even more. And then there's things like actually using bulbs or potted up flowers on the tables, which can then be planted outside in the bride's garden after the event as well.
Yeah, lovely.
It's just stunning. These sorts of things really speak to my heart, and I'd like to think that post COVID-19 we're going to see an increase in that sort of design work within the floral industry.
Yeah, perfect. Bit of a fun one. What's the first thing you're going to be doing as soon as lockdown is lifted? What's the first thing on your to-do list?
Oh, I'm gonna get in my car, drive for 5 hours and go to see my parents because I'm desperate to see them and they are desperate to see their little grandson.
Yeah, I bet. Oh my goodness, that must be so hard. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
even this is exactly it, virtual events and technology is fantastic, but it's just not quite the same as seeing someone in real life. So,
I know.
no. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much.